While fair data is vital for the advancement of science in catalysis and related domains, there are also rules governing the use and reuse of data. Various policies and regulations are important to ensure data is treated or made available in a proper way. Within a research project, a number of conditions need to be followed. Most importantly, these are the principles of good scientific practice, policies by projects, institutions and publishers, patent law, and intellectual property. One of the most often posed questions is who owns research data? First of all, since data is often not a physical object, it cannot be owned in a legal sense. However, the usage rights of the data govern who is allowed to use the research data. For an independent researcher, those usage rights always belong to him or herself. But it is not always that simple. For researchers working at an institution or in industry, the research is often steered by the employer. As this research work was done under instructions, the usage rights often belong to the employer instead. As this can lead to complicated situations, it is important, especially in academia, to document agreements on the usage rights of data in a project as early as possible. Above all, it needs to be clarified who has the right to use data, who is allowed to publish the research, and who will retain the usage rights once the researcher leaves the institution. Research data from most projects funded by the DFG require that the data will be stored and will remain reusable for at least 10 years, either at the institution or in a suitable repository. In publicly funded projects, results and data should be published openly, as long as no third-party interests are violated by doing so. There might be also different requirements, for example, that sensitive research data needs to be stored in Germany. Many repositories or cloud services with servers outside of Germany would not be usable for storage of the data in this case. Even after publication in a journal, the policies of publishers are very important, since they regulate how the published results can be used again. For example, if a research paper can be included in a thesis, at conferences, or as preprints. Often, a permission from the publisher is needed to do so. When a paper is available online, the necessary contact point to get the permission is provided with the paper itself. Even with a permission, the original publication needs to be cited and acknowledged. Be sure to check the publisher policies to see if a permission is needed for your planned actions. While books, research papers, or other written work are protected by copyright, the data itself is not protected by copyright, as it's just a representation of facts. Although it can be made available in a public domain, where the data can be freely reused without conditions, scientists would still like to be acknowledged for their work and have some control over the reuse of their research. Therefore, licenses can be applied for research data. The most common type of license is the Creative Commons license. It exists in multiple types. CC0, data can be freely copied and reused. For all CC BY licenses, the creator needs to be acknowledged when data is reused. However, there can be further restrictions. With NC, the data cannot be used for commercial purposes. With SA, all work based on the data must be published under the same license. And with ND, no derivatives are allowed, meaning the data can only be reused in its current state without changes. The licenses can be also combined. For instance, a CC, BY, NC, SA license means the creator needs to be credited, only non-commercial use is allowed, and all work based on the data must be published under the same license. Generally, the CC BY license is the best option for data, as long as there are no third-party interests, because it provides the most freedom for reuse while also crediting the creator. Metadata, on the other hand, always needs to be available to make research findable, which makes a CC0 license most suitable, as researchers will be able to find your work without any hurdles. Think about which license is right for your data and agree with your partners in a project. Publishing data under a NC license might not be a good idea if you're working together with industry, as they would most likely not be allowed to reuse your data. Also, ND and NC restrict the reuse of data, and are therefore not considered as open access, which could clash with the requirements of a project. For other purposes but data, different licenses exist. For example, Open Data Commons and Open Database Commons for entire databases, or the Free and Open Source Software Licenses, FLOSS for software. If you want to know more about reuse of data or wish to find more useful information on how we can help you or your organization, or support us, ask us questions, or simply subscribe to our newsletter to stay in touch. Join us in shaping the data-driven evolution of catalysis. nfdi4cat.org